Hello and welcome to Halloween. I was going to record this video yesterday and things just got out of hand and I had to make a million pumpkin spice chocolate cupcakes and it was a whole thing. So we're recording it today, we're posting it today, hoping to capture those last few minutes of Halloween for your Halloween vibes. So that's what this video is all about. I got my witch hat on and we are going to talk Halloween vibes. What are you reading for your ultimate Halloween vibe? But first, what am I reading? Well, I'm reading Eva Evergreen and the Cursed Witch by Julia Abbey and really loving it. Loving it more than the first one, even, which is so darling. Really fun, witch world, very Kiki's delivery service. You'll love them. Um, I am also I just finished reading Sharon McMahon's The Small and the Mighty, and coming up on this election, go vote, please. Vote with your heart. It's fine, but everyone in America should read this book, The Small and the Mighty, which is the stories of real Americans who you don't hear their names very much, but they changed our history and they changed our country in amazing ways. And I loved it so much. Sharon McMahon is such an amazing, brilliant person. She's a former teacher who is now basically America's government teacher. So definitely check this out. I am listening to the audiobook of this bad boy, Lord of Chaos by Robert Jordan. I've been reading my way through the Wheel of Time books because the TV series, and I'm up to Lord of Chaos, and I'm listening to the audiobooks, though, I gotta say, it's not great. Or yeah, it's the audiobook isn't great. Oh, it has two readers. The woman that reads it is amazing, and the man that reads it is not. That's all I will say. And I just finished reading this book aloud to the kids, The Willoughbys by Lois Lowry. I've read this and I love this book so much. My daughter read it and just loved it to pieces. And so we're reading it together before we start on The Willoughbys' return, which is coming up next. So, what are we reading though for our Halloween vibes today? Well, obviously, you got to have great picture books for Halloween. And I do have some excellent suggestions that I have not talked about before. Hecate Peg by Audrey Wood and Dawn Wood. This fabulous fairy tale illustrated, so cool. The illustrations, I think, are just amazing and magical. The Woods have such magical style. Well, it's Dawn. Dawn's the illustrator, and his wife Audrey is the words. And the illustrations are so gorgeous and just glowy and beautiful. And it's such a spooky story. If you don't know this story, I will not tell you, but it is super creepy, and I love it so much. And my kids loved it too. The Widow's Broom by Chris Van Allsburg, one of his, the Jumanji guy, one of his books about a witch that falls off her broom and her broom ends up in the home of an old widow who recognizes at once that it is not a regular broom, it's a witch's broom. And it is an absolutely charming story with his wonderful drawings, which always seem spooky to me, even when they're not supposed to be. I think it's the black and white. So that's super fun. Room on the Broom, one of our all-time favorites, Julia Donaldson and Axel Scheffler. Love this book. There's also a very darling cartoon, I think it's on Netflix right now, adaptation of it with like a stellar voice cast. But this is such a cute story, super fun, about this witch and all the creatures that she picks up to ride on her broom over Halloween night. And it's so fun. And it even has a dragon in it. So I love it. What Was I Scared Of by Dr. Seuss, which is an actual glow-in-the-dark book about a little person being chased by a glowing green pair of pants with no one in them. And it's just really cute. And it's really, it's classic Dr. Seuss, but it's also this monochromatic style is very Halloween and stuff. Love it. And one of my all-time favorite books, just in general, The Halloweener by Dave Pilkey. This book is so funny and so cute, and the wordplay is so darling, and when his mom dresses him like a hot dog for Halloween, even though he wants to be something scary. It's just you feel for him. You know what it's like. You've been that child. So this one is so darling. We love that one so much. But this is probably the favorite Halloween book in our house. Jerry Seinfeld's Halloween. It is based on a stand-up routine he used to do, and you can get recordings of him reading it, which I highly recommend. But talking about Halloween's when he was a kid and wanting to be Superman, and then finding out that, the costume is like Superman's pajamas instead of an actual super suit. You can't fly in it. Your mom makes you wear your winter coat over it. But the whole point of Halloween is to get candy, get candy. It's such a favorite. I have gone into my kids' schools every year until this year. This is the first year I don't have an elementary school student for like 20 years. But I've gone into their classrooms every Halloween and always read this one, and usually Room on the Broom. Those are my two go-tos for reading aloud in a classroom. All right, now if you want some spookiness as well in more of like a early chapter or a good read aloud, The Skull. I've also read this aloud in classrooms when it came out last year. The Skull by John Clausen is based on an old Hungarian fairy tale, which he did not remember correctly. There's a whole little story about how he read it one time and then sort of forgot some of the details and stuff. But the skull and this little girl who runs away from home and ends up in a castle where there's no one else there but the skull. It is so interesting. It's very classic, very European fairy tale, and it's ultimately very charming, but spooky illustration, spooky concept. It kind of reminds me of The Boy Who Left Home to Find Out About the Shivers, if you know that story. Don't know that one. And if you like a little bit silly for your Halloween, Ham Helsing. This series is so fun. Ham Helsing Vampire Hunter by Rich Moyer is a young middle grade graphic novel about this little pig who wants to be a vampire hunter as the members of his family before him have been. And it's a series he goes on. He encounters different monsters. It's super fun. My youngest, who's 12, and I both love this one really much. The Marvelous Magic of Miss Mabel. I was going to say The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. That's something else. That's not for kids. The Marvelous Magic of Miss Mabel by Natasha Lowe is super charming. It's a series. I read this one aloud to my kids when I found it, and we have all loved it. And we've read the other books in the series. This is almost sort of a prequel. But this just absolutely precious book about a little witch who she's actually found in a flower pot as a baby. And she's going to magic school and how she sort of revolutionizes her magic school and things like that. It's super cute. I love these books to pieces, but this has always been my favorite. The Marvelous Magic of Miss Mabel by Natasha Lowe. And I just finished this the other day and absolutely loved it. Really excited for the second one. Witchlings by Claribel A. Ortega. Super darling. Sort of a alternate witch world. Like the kids are all expecting to be witches in their town and to get sorted into a coven and things. It's very Harry Potter, but American, and also everybody's a witch. And so it was really fun and I really enjoyed it. It was giving me very Halloweeny vibes, and really excited for the second one and that she's going on and doing this as a series because this is really cute. And Nightmares. Jason Segel, the actor, the one from the Muppets and things like the new Muppet movies and stuff like that, and Kirsten Miller, who is such an amazing author, co-wrote this book. It's actually the first in a trilogy. The trilogy is now finished. Does this one have a particular? Okay, this one is just Nightmares. They have like sort of subtitles, the other ones, but this is based on a real nightmare that he had, a specific nightmare as a kid that a witch was climbing into his room and eating his toes. And he goes into the nightmare world and encounters other people's nightmares, scary clowns, haunted dolls, all those things. And it is really, really fun. And I really enjoyed this series. It's middle grade. It's really great. It's spooky without being like too scary. because the standard for me is like Coraline. Coraline is like way too scary for me. Nightmares is not that scary, but it's also not like, oh, and it turned out that we were all just having a little dream. It's a little bit it's it's between it was all a dream and we were all safe in our beds the whole time and Coraline. Let's do that. Um, the Okay Witch books. I know I've talked about these before. Don't care. They're my favorites. Um, the Okay Witch series by Emma Steinkelmer. I love these books so much. I just can't even stand it. It just reminds me of the worst witch, where she's not the worst witch, she's an okay witch. And her familiar, who is a cat that is actually possessed by the spirit of an elderly Jewish man, is one of my all-time favorite things. He's their former landlord in the body of a cat. He is hilarious and one of my favorite parts of these books. But The Okay Witch is a fantastic book, deals with a lot of different things. They're graphic novels, really fun. I love the art, I love the story, I love everything. And the sequel is The Okay Witch and the Hungry Shadow, just as great. I'm really hoping that she does more of these because I love them so much. So does my daughter. Alrighty, now we have The Exchange by Graham Joyce. Now, this book is set in England and does not take place at Halloween. But whenever I think of Halloweeny books, I think of this book. The UK title of it was Doing the Creepy. And it starts out with this girl and her friends where they dare each other to do what they call the creepy, which is to sneak into someone's house in the night, to break into someone's house and just like go up to them as they sleep and touch them. Or maybe take something off their bedside table, like nothing expensive, just like something that will kind of mess with them a little bit. So that is freaky enough because waking up in your bed and realizing there's someone standing over you is probably one of the most terrifying things that can ever happen. But the very beginning, this girl goes into an old lady's home, leans over her to like tap her or something in her sleep, and then run back and tell her friends. And it doesn't turn out well for her. They should not have gone into that house. Nope. Really good, very ambient, very spooky, and really fun and really unusual. I love Graham Joyce's books. They're so odd. They're so odd. Ray Bradbury. Where would we be without talking about Ray Bradbury? The October Country is my favorite collection of his short stories. I love the Martian stories, they're great, but The October Country, I think, were the first ones that I ever read for myself. And they are terrifying and they are so, so good. Um, I love them all. The Watchful Poker Chip of Matisse, Skeleton. Oh, Skeleton will get you. All those things. The Small Assassin. These are some of his absolute scariest short stories. This is such a fun book. And it's Ray Bradbury. So actually, if you've got like teens that want to read a spooky story, even like kind of younger kids that want to read a spooky story, they've got a big vocabulary and stuff like that. It's absolutely appropriate for a younger reader that's got a big vocabulary and wants to be scared. There's nothing graphic in any way in these books. Or the stories. I love Ray Bradbury so much, and that is his best collection, in my opinion. Also, if you've read a lot of his short stories, you need to read From the Dust Returned. You can read it without having read the stories, but this is his first novel about the family, who are essentially vampires, and they pop up in his short stories. Like Uncle Einar has been in a bunch of his stories, and they are a family of vampires, but the one little boy, their youngest son, is not. He's a human, and they all feel really sad for him. And it's sort of like the Munsters. And remember, they had their niece living with them who was normal. And so it's sort of like a Munsters situation where this little boy being raised by these people who sleep all day, and grandmama that lives in the attic is a mummy and things like that. And it's a really interesting look at what happens to them and what that looks like to be raised by a family of vampires and mummies and things like that. Love that. The Night Circus. Also, not specific to Halloween, but if we're going for vibes, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern, one of my all-time favorite books. I absolutely love The Night Circus, and just everything about this book, the color palette, all the things are Halloween to me, let's say, and I love it so much. If you have not read The Night Circus, you absolutely must. For something a little more fun, bit of a rom-com, Sorcery and the Single Girl, and I've talked about these before as well, Mindy Klasky, but they're just so super fun. This is the first book, and this woman moves into a house and discovers that she has basically just inherited a witch's cottage. She's inherited the familiar, she's inherited the Book of Spells, and now she has to be a witch. And they're really fun, a little bit flirty. Um, there's rom-com element to it and stuff like that. And she's trying to balance her life as a regular person and as a modern day witch. It's really fun. But now for the grand finale, Dracula. I mean, look at this copy. If you want a great read for Halloween, get Dracula. Get yourself a copy of Dracula. Download an audiobook with a really great reader or a full cast and treat yourself to one of the great Halloween stories. Does it take place over Halloween? No. Does anybody care? Also, no. This is a classic. This is one of my favorite books, and there are a million adaptations and beautiful editions. This one is covered in velvet, illustrated by Edward Gorey. I have graphic novels. I've shown them off to you. I have pop-up books and graphic novels and board books of Dracula and audiobook versions. So get yourself a copy of Dracula and enjoy. And everyone have a happy Halloween and stay safe trick-or-treating.